Right-wing pundit Jordan Peterson is finally learning that his actions are after some controversial tweets. Apparently, his practicing license as a psychologist may be revoked if he refuses to undergo a mandatory coaching program. Yet Peterson is finally being disciplined by a major institution. And the institution is the same college that allows him to be a practicing psychologist, the College of Psychologists of Ontario. The college reported having received a plethora of complaints regarding the infamous professor and clinical psychologist's conduct on Twitter. These tweets led the panel at the college to believe that Peterson may be degrading the profession and consequently raise questions about his abilities and credibility as a psychologist. In response, the college decreed that Peterson would have to pay for a media training program or face an allegation of professional misconduct, which could potentially lead to the suspension of his license. Now, we've all come to expect things like this from Peterson, but he's always gotten himself off the hook. This time, though, it's a little more serious. Even though it began with a bunch of tweets. What tweets, you ask? Just a couple you'd expect from someone like Peterson. There were a couple he'd made about the public restrictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and still others that were centered mostly around LGBTQ+ issues and personalities. There was particular concern with a series of statements he made referring to Catherine McKinney, a counselor who identifies with they-them pronouns, as an appalling, self-righteous, moralizing thing. Then he sent out another tweet that used the former name of actor Elliot Page, telling his followers to recall the time when pride was a sin. And that's not it. He even quote-tweeted a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover of a plus-size model saying that she was not beautiful, saying that no amount of authoritarian tolerance would change that. It all went downhill from there. A number of people on Twitter wasted no time bringing Peterson's tweets to the college's attention, and we already know how they reacted. They ordered Peterson to complete a mandatory specified continuing education or remedial program to review, reflect on, and improve his professionalism in public statements. This meant that he would have to meet with a psychologist for coaching classes that he'd have to pay for out of his own pocket until a final report is issued by the coach showing that their concerns have been ameliorated. Do you think that made Peterson back down? Of course not. In fact, he did something that surprised many, so here's how he reacted to the orders. Since the news broke out, Peterson has said that he has absolutely no intention of giving up his fight against Ontario's psychologist regulatory body. He's accused the college of attempting to restrict his speech and unfairly discipline him for his political opinions. He straight up refused the college's demands, arguing that the tweets that were being cited by them had nothing to do with the profession of psychology. He also argued that he no longer treats patients and that his career is instead focused on social and political commentary. So that gives the college even less of a right to punish him. But even though he's given up his clinical practice when he gained a global profile, he has said that he doesn't want to give up his clinical license. As for the college's claims about his tweets and comments tarnishing the image of their institution in practice, Peterson has said that the opposite is true and that his voice has actually increased the prestige of both the institution and the field. So there you have it. It seems like they won't be showing up for those classes, right? So what happens next? Well, the man had a huge threat waiting, he said. Well, he said that if push comes to shove, he'll attend the classes, but he has also pledged to make all the details of what they're teaching public. If he doesn't attend them, however, we're guessing he's losing his license after all. So even though Peterson has repeatedly said that he doesn't even practice anymore since he closed his doors to it back in 2017, we believe isn't a permanent decision. The National Post reported that in 2018 he agreed to a plan to improve his clinical practice. The newspaper said that they had a few details of what made up professional misconduct in that instance, but the complaint primarily had to do with how he communicated with his clients, the quality of his service, and boundaries with his patients. So clearly, if the man had agreed to making improvements, he did plan on reopening his practice in the future. That's probably why he's fighting against this so hard. According to him, though, there are other reasons. Free speech being under attack, for instance. Peterson has been pretty vocal about the whole ordeal having to do with regulatory bodies' attack on the people's rights to free speech. He has talked about how such bodies, backed by government power, usually attempt to silence most powerful personalities by directly threatening their livelihood. But what he doesn't understand is that the college must ensure that all of its members, Peterson included, maintain professionalism at all times. It's a professional organization that is entirely responsible for and allowed to make decisions that protect the best interests of its members and the public they serve. So yeah, there's currently an ongoing debate on the matter, and there's people on both sides. What's the takeaway from all of it though? Abolish government licensing. Of course, Peterson's side argues that the licensing system is being weaponized against popular professionals with unpopular views and has become a powerful tool for censorship. No one can deny that's happening. The system can become responsible for intimidating professionals into conformity mainly because the bodies that exist within are backed by the government itself. If licensing laws were to be repealed, these regulatory bodies would be left with no power. But then, how would consumers be protected from unethical and incapable practitioners? Here's the answer: turning to free market certification. This can come in the form of many forms. One of them that would most likely take form would be a series of voluntary professional associations. This would allow said professionals to work without an affiliation to a known association, but would be able to attract potential customers through association's branding itself. In this case, you might have an association called the Psychologist Professionals of Ontario, and to join it, you'd have to fulfill certain requirements. The association would also have its own set of reasonable rules that the members will be obligated to follow to keep their licensing certificate. Practitioners who transgress those rules may be kicked out of the association. The consumers would determine whose services will be bought, not the bureaucrats. So then if someone like Peterson comes along and does something that genuinely hurts the profession they belong to, they can simply be removed from their respective association. In this case, while their license may not be revoked, they'll still be hard-pressed to find clients because they won't have an association's reputation to go with their name. The professional who has been removed from the association won't have the liberty or grounds to appeal the association's decision either. Sounds fair, doesn't it? As long as you're a consumer who's doing their homework before availing services, this system should work in your favor too. But what about the people who don't do their homework? That's when we say caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. At the end of the day, it's the buyer's responsibility to ensure that they know what they're getting into. If they get hurt because they didn't do their due diligence, that's on them. And it definitely isn't the government's job to protect people from making bad personal choices, especially since what makes a bad choice is a matter of contention, as you can see from Peterson's case. Which side are you on this whole debacle? Do you think Peterson's going to let go of his practicing license? Let us know. Until then, see you in the next one.